I used to think my gas was a social issue, something to hide, something to laugh off, something that meant I'd eaten too much broccoli or one too many beans. But over time, I realized that my digestive system wasn't just noisy, it was strangely efficient. What I once saw as a personal embarrassment turned out to be a window into one of the body's most underrated biological systems, the human gut microbiome. Every fart, every bubble, every uncomfortable rumble tells a story about the microscopic life inside us. And sometimes, that story isn't about humor or hygiene at all. It's about metabolism, microbial dominance, and even how well your body harvests calories from food. For some people, the very act of passing gas may be proof that their bodies are too good at turning food into energy, an invisible process that might slowly nudge them toward weight gain, fatigue, or metabolic dysfunction, all while they joke about who dealt it. The average person produces about half a liter to a liter and a half of gas daily. This comes mostly from swallowed air and microbial fermentation. But chronic farters, those who experience excessive or unusually persistent gas, are a different case altogether. They are often the hosts of a specific type of gut microorganism known as methanogenic archaea. Unlike typical bacteria that release hydrogen or carbon dioxide, methanogens use those gases and convert them into methane. The presence of these methane-producing microbes changes the chemistry of digestion entirely. Instead of letting undigested carbohydrates pass through the intestines relatively quickly, the methanogens slow things down, extending the time food remains in the gut. This longer transit allows the body to extract more energy from each meal, a kind of metabolic thriftiness that, in the ancient world, might have been a survival advantage. But in today's calorie-dense environment, that same efficiency can backfire, contributing to bloating, constipation, weight retention, and even subtle metabolic disorders. This microbial efficiency isn't just theoretical. Research has found that people who produce more methane through their breath or flatulence tend to have slower digestion and are more likely to struggle with constipation-predominant irritable bowel syndrome. Some even show higher fasting glucose levels and insulin resistance, suggesting that these efficient digesters are storing more energy than they use. In other words, if you are someone who farts more often than your peers, your body might be quietly optimizing itself into metabolic imbalance. It's not your imagination if you feel tired, bloated, or heavier even when you haven't overeaten. Methanogens, microscopic calorie harvesters, are simply doing their job too well. And yet, this story isn't purely biological. The social and psychological effects of chronic flatulence can be significant. People who constantly pass gas often develop deep anxiety about eating in public or even being in enclosed spaces. They learn to hold their breath, avoid certain foods, and construct elaborate daily routines to minimize embarrassment. But this kind of vigilance can create its own cycle of harm. Restricting high-fiber foods, for example, might reduce immediate gas, but it also starves beneficial gut bacteria that prevent methane overgrowth. Likewise, skipping meals or relying on processed safe foods may further distort microbial diversity, creating an even greater imbalance that leads to more gas production later on. The result is a frustrating, often self-perpetuating cycle of shame and discomfort. A deeper look at this problem reveals that chronic flatulence is not a random quirk. It's often a symptom of gut dysbiosis, meaning an imbalance in the microbial population that supports digestion. Methanogens thrive when there's an abundance of hydrogen to consume, which happens when carbohydrate digestion is incomplete or when small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, SIBO, pushes fermentation higher up the digestive tract. In such cases, the methane doesn't just make you gassy, it changes how your intestines contract and move. Slower motility traps food residues longer, promoting even more fermentation and gas accumulation. This can lead to feelings of heaviness after eating, abdominal distension, and unpredictable bowel habits that fluctuate between constipation and sudden urgency. There's also an overlooked link between chronic gas and inflammation. When the gut microbiota becomes unbalanced, the intestinal barrier can weaken, allowing microbial byproducts to enter the bloodstream. This phenomenon, sometimes called leaky gut, can trigger low-grade immune responses that contribute to fatigue, joint aches, or brain fog, subtle symptoms that many chronic fartists dismiss as stress or aging. Methane itself isn't directly toxic, but the environment that allows methanogens to thrive can signal broader digestive distress. If left unaddressed, it can make the entire system less resilient, more reactive to foods, and slower to heal. The modern diet doesn't help. Processed carbohydrates, artificial sweeteners, and low-fiber convenience foods alter the microbial balance in ways that favor gas-producing species. Meanwhile, stress, lack of sleep, and chronic dehydration impair digestion and reduce the body's ability to regulate gut motility. The constant intake of antibiotics, whether from medication or residues in meat, wipes out the very bacteria that keep methanogens in check. So while it's easy to laugh about gas, the real issue may lie in the quiet, unseen decline of microbial harmony. The people who suffer most are often those who eat well but still feel bloated and heavy, wondering why healthy foods make them feel worse. There's also a dark irony here. The very foods most praised for digestive health, beans, lentils, cruciferous vegetables, are also prime fermentation fuel for methanogens. For most people, they improve gut function over time. But for someone whose microbiome is dominated by methane-producing microbes, those foods can backfire dramatically. The result is a constant loop of health-conscious eating followed by discomfort and embarrassment, leading some to give up on nutrition altogether. It's no wonder that chronic farters often find themselves confused, frustrated, and socially isolated, torn between the desire to eat well and the fear of what their bodies might do afterward. So while it might seem funny to joke about toxic gas or claim that beans don't love you back, persistent flatulence is often a warning sign, not just an inconvenience. It's the body's way of saying that the microbial orchestra inside has gone out of tune. Methanogens may be small, but their impact is large on digestion, metabolism, and even mood. They reveal just how much our modern habits can warp the delicate balance of the gut ecosystem. Chronic gas is not merely the punchline of a bad meal, it's the whisper of an invisible world inside you, trying to tell you something is off. In the end, every fart does tell a story. But for chronic farters, that story might be less about humor and more about imbalance, inefficiency disguised as efficiency, and a microbiome that's quietly rewriting the body's energy economy. What seems like a private embarrassment could, in truth, be a sign that your body's inner chemistry has tilted too far toward methane, the mark of a gut that's holding onto calories and releasing warnings with every breath you try to laugh away.